All right, welcome to another episode of Behind the Shield. Today I have Tanner Bailey, a longtime employee of InfusionPoints, has a rich history of time here at InfusionPoints, and we have a guest coming in a little bit. But Tanner, can you give me just a quick update of who you are, what you're about, and why InfusionPoints?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up about 15 minutes from Infusion Points and actually went to high school in the same county. So I got to junior year of high school, got a internship offer through Infusion Points, and as a 17-year-old was very much in over my head with the sock.
We would never have known that.
That was the goal. So after the internship in high school, I went to college, got my degree, and I came back and have been with Infusion Points since 2021 on our advisory team. Doing compliance, SME work, documentation development, audit support, also just coordinating and managing projects, including what we're talking about today.
Cool.
And I'm also in charge of our internship program and consolidating
And
that.
we appreciate that very much. We've
Absolutely.
gotten quite a few good interns through that program.
I definitely agree. And just as a plug for future episodes, we are planning to do some episodes on the internship for the podcast.
Cool.
So,
And then what are we here to talk about today, and why you?
we're here to talk about 20x, which is I guess the big thing, if you could call it one big thing right now in our industry. And that's because I help coordinate the project for 20x.
Good. So, and you're talking about FedRAMP.
FedRAMP 20x.
20x.
Yeah, we call it 20x, and FedEx has been thrown around a couple of times as jokes, but FedRAMP 20x officially.
There you go. And FedEx is probably because of me smashing up an acronym or something. So, and when we first started looking at 3PAOs to help us with this, the first people that came to our mind was Fortreum. And then Jason and I went and spoke to James and Michael over at Fortreum and said, look, this is what we want to do. What and how are we going to do this? We need somebody who can program, somebody who's more technical, somebody who's more of an engineer. And I don't know if it was James or it was Michael that said, hey, I know the right guy. And today we have that right guy with us on this podcast. And his name is Ethan Troy. And let's go ahead and introduce Ethan. So maybe, Ethan, you can give us a quick update of who you are, what you're about, and why you hate screenshots.
Yeah, I'm Ethan Troy, and I'm a assessor at Fortreum. I kind of a technical project manager and lead all kind of aspects and oversee the penetration testing, scanning stuff, and the manual stuff. And I guess for you guys, it was you needed somebody that could actually read code and familiar with DevOps practices and a little bit more technical than the typical check the box auditor. So I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is what I was saying, 5+ years ago that we should be doing, anyways.
Yeah, we've been anti-screenshots for a long time, and I know I've had a few arguments with auditors about, I just ran this script and it's giving you this output, but I need to see it actually in the screen. So it was a big change, for FedRAMP. So what is your background as well? I see a lot of good things that you're posting on LinkedIn. I'm going to say something about, I think you posted this last night, and we're recording this and in the beginning of October. So if you go back and look at your thread, I think you may have posted last night, but you talked about the one big key thing about being able to do this kind of work is being a problem solver and understanding how to recognize patterns, right? Being a pattern recognizer. And I said to myself, ooh, that's what I've always said about myself as well, as I can recognize any kind of pattern quickly.
Yeah. I guess for me, like I didn't come from a typical technical background. I was in healthcare. I was a medic in the Army, and I worked as an EMT. I was in full-blown nursing school at one point, and I just some family stuff happened. I ended up working as a first responder at NASA, and I just met someone that was working as an IT auditor at Ernst& Young, and he told me what he did, and I was like, that sounds really easy. I could probably do that. And that's really how I got into auditing. But as I got into auditing, I realized there was a lot of technical gaps. Like I didn't understand how a lot of these softwares and technologies worked. So I went down the offensive path to pretty much inform the auditing path. But yeah, to your point about the whole pattern recognition thing is I think we have a lot of people that are just kind of like set in their ways. on, hey, this is what you need to do, and it's just very they kind of put people in a box where it's like, can we get step things back and like figure out what is the whole point of what we're doing. The whole point of compliance frameworks is to ensure that organizations are, putting security in place, not necessarily the compliance framework. And yeah, I guess more on the pattern recognition thing is that once you develop this ability to, okay, this is the same thing as that, this applies to that, then your ability to learn and apply your learning to pretty much anything is just really powerful, and you don't really
So
get that
using
from
the same evidence for multiple checks, is that what you're saying? And not be
yeah.
asked the same question 13 times. So, you know, I think that's kind of what I see as pattern recognition. And we hear, and it sounds to me like you guys have done the same thing or similar thing. We call them themes, right? There's a firewall theme. There's I say firewall, but it's really, boundary protection. There's an identity management one. There's a access management. There's a logging one. So all those are very, very similar. So let's group them together and let's ask the same questions around that to give you the better picture of the overall piece of it. So Tanner, how about let's talk about the project coordination and then how we actually went about getting our engineers together with Ethan and his team.
Yeah, so the first step in all this 20x stuff was wrapping our minds around it, because I think the metaphor of it being a grenade has been thrown around a lot. Everything that the GSA team, Pete and team has done has been very transparent, and what you said specifically, Ethan, about getting to the point of FedRAMP and the point of these compliance frameworks is security, and then on top of that, the innovation that comes with it. So once we got our minds wrapped around what we were actually going after, of eliminating all screenshots from the process, or as many as we can at least where reasonable, and then getting the team on board, it was really a matter of building out the AuditShield module that we've got built inside of Command Center. Command Center being our internal proprietary tool that serves for all things GRC, vulnerability tracking. We have our Conmon dashboards in there for our managed environments. And getting to the point where we could display the KSIs, those key security indicators, and their related checks, really making sure that, because we know the environments, making sure that we're comprehensive with the KSIs and actually capturing everything from a security perspective. And then it was a matter of talking with Ethan and team about, how do we get Ethan what he needs to prove and to, give his report on how we're doing it. And, as Ethan's proven, he's got the technical expertise, so it's a matter of making sure we could communicate our scripts and really give him the information that he needs. So it's very collaborative, unlike any audit that we've been through or any assessment we've been through, which was very satisfying.
I remember some of those initial discussions with Ethan, and we were all like, so how are we going to audit this thing? And we're like, really what you need to do is we need to flip the script, right? It's not really just about the outputs. It really is about checking the checker, right? That testing mechanism. That's the thing that you really need to focus your attention on, is that testing mechanism. And if that testing mechanism produces the right output, it's going to produce the right output everywhere you go, unless you change that testing algorithm. And that's something key. And I know when we first spoke about that, that was a big aha moment for all of us, as we talked that through. Maybe talk about that a bit and why that has changed. Maybe the skills required a bit for, for auditors that you see in the future, because I've heard you talk about this previously. So.
Yeah, definitely. We did have that aha moment, like pretty much together, where we were like, what are we actually assessing here? Are we doing the same thing we did before? But then it became clear that, we are really assessing the logic that's associated with how you guys are presenting your security posture. And if that logic is correct, then everything should just bleed true for that. But yeah, in terms of skills, that logic was all written in Python and lambdas, AWS lambdas, and most auditors don't know how to read code. So that's something we realized very recently, that we need those skills on like how to read Python code, how to read what is a function, what is infrastructure as code, these type of things. Even basic Linux. You were talking about posts I made. I made a post the other day about you just need to know basic Python, Linux, and networking, and that will take you very far. And I actually made that post like 5 years ago on Twitter, and people got really angry about that post, and I think people are still pretty angry about that. But it's the truth is that those basic skills apply to everything, even GRC auditing, and especially assessing as we get to the point where the expectation from the FedRAMP 20x is that everyone has a trust center and everyone has this ability to share their security posture programmatically. So what value does an auditor add to that process if they can't evaluate, that process? And that process is all in code.
Especially as now we're automating everything, right? I mean, since especially like for us, our entire infrastructure is all infrastructure as code, which is the one thing I added to that list. That's more of a newer thing, in my opinion. You really have to understand infrastructure as code as well. Yeah. But networking, to me, is the fundamental skill for any IT person. But you really have to understand how all that works together in order to bring it together. So, and then infrastructure code now, to me, is vital. Because everything we deploy is all in infrastructure as code, and if you don't understand how it works, it's very straightforward, but it's not the same kind of logic like it's in Python or other languages as well, right? So you've got whether you use whatever infrastructure as code that you use, unless you're using the CDK that can use Python to then activate APIs, but that's a whole nother story. Keep it as simple as possible. Infrastructure is good.
There's a lot of ways to do it. There's a lot of ways to do it. Terraform, there's me, there's people that write infrastructure code in JavaScript if they want to.
Right. No, they do. They do. Yeah. So, and for us, we have that fully opinionated design, and that makes it easy for us to be able to check everything because it's going to be built the exact same way, or pretty close to the exact same way, or I like to say exactly the same but completely different for every customer that we have. Because
that's what made your audit really easy, actually.
Yeah.
Well, when we were going through the process and then I was talking to Gary about the next time when we do the moderates, I was like, can we just do InfusionPoints first? Because it's gonna be really easy. Right. And I'm not saying it to kiss anybody's butt and stuff. It's because the way you guys structured the platform is all code. It's all really easy to follow. It's actually very easy for me as an auditor to go in. Okay, let's review all the Python lambdas, the infrastructure as code. Everything is very much there. If it was a different sort of GRC platform where like everything is kind of under the hood, it would have actually took me longer to do the assessment because as the third party auditor, I have to validate the veracity of a lot of these things, and I don't really have that problem with you guys because everything is there.
Yeah, everything's purpose built. Everything. So we know the API into it. We know how we set it up. We know the metadata that goes along with it. Let me change the subject a little bit. Not a lot, but what are you guys, both of you guys? What are you guys feeling on the lack of SSP in the Word documents that go with that, and maybe talk a little bit about the quest for the criteria, right? The criteria language they want to put on each of the KSIs as well.
Ethan, you want to go first?
On documentation, I thought for a very long time that documentation shouldn't be in docx and PDF. Markdown has been around for a long time, and that was one way to go about it. I know when 20x came up, a lot of people said, we can't automate policies and procedures, and I was like, well, we can, you just don't know how to,
right?
because you're not not an operator. But there's plenty of tools out there. I was even at IBM's event this past weekend, and they have a tool called DocLing that converts PDF, docx and stuff into structured JSON formats, whether that structured JSON format is the JSON format that you want, or you want to use OSCAL or something. there's definitely the capability to take these sort of legacy documents and put them into a format that's more machine usable and ready to be used, and even automated, so where you guys could create a workflow. Hey, what is this organization doing for this policy access control? That stuff can be queryable. Just somebody has to build it, right?
Right. And what's your view?
Yeah, for me,
I know you've done a few SSPs in your lifetime.
Yeah, I was about to say, for me, it's very much I love it because I know how grueling SSP development has been for years when you're doing it manually. And, I think to the process whenever I have to update an SSP, and, whether it's, a minor update or it's something in the diagram that's major, or, it's a significant change, there's this review process that it never seems like there's the perfect way to do it. And I think the move towards things like, markup or JSON or whatever automated, or, JSON, whatever format you want to do an SSP that isn't docx or PDF, I think it's going to get back again to the point of the security. You have your SSP because you have to have your narrative. You need to have your explanation for how the system works. You need to have, the details for your data flows. All that is still important. SSPs are still going to be needed, but the checkboxy nature of SSPs is going away, and I'm very glad to see that, because I want to see the importance of the SSPs, the important parts and reasoning behind SSPs be what continues, as opposed to just writing 325 controls because you have to write 325 controls.
And I think that's two things that they're doing there, right? I think it's the evaluation criteria of why this thing that you just automated is actually green and not red, right? And then also what is the description of that validation? So those two things to me take it a long way, So we're going to check to make sure that we have all the firewalls and that have all the WAF rules that for whatever standard we're trying to meet. That's the check. Why does it pass? Because every firewall that we have, by the way, here's a list of all those firewalls, and then here's a list of all those WAF rules that go along with each of those firewalls as well.
And I think it's what you were mentioning earlier about the themes for, whether it was evidence collection during an audit or themes for the controls, they were already broken down fairly well by NIST into, AC, AT, AU, et cetera. But with the KSIs, there's a lot of overlap from family to family, where you can go to WAF, for the example you just used, and capture, 5 to 6 different validation checks that had to do with, multiple control families and multiple controls within those families. So you're still getting the control implementation summary details with the KSIs without having to rewrite with some tweaks.
Right,
if you're doing, control enhancement 1 or you're doing control enhancement 2. Yeah.
So as an auditor, I know you like to write them because that's like your favorite thing to do. But how about you? Did you love reading SSPs as an auditor? You didn't?
No, as auditors, we have PL2 findings, right? Which always feels like this glorified fact check when it's like, oh, well, well, you misspelled this, and you said you were on Ubuntu version, 20.4, but you're really on 18. I feel like those things don't really add value to, clients, diving through their SSP and, finding errors in their documentation. But it's part of the job. I think you guys are right. We still definitely need to account for these things. It's just the way that we are accounting for them right now, and we have been accounting them for years, is very kind of archaic. Like it doesn't mesh well with the true development and systems that they stand over. There's tons of policy as code frameworks out there. OSCAL is not the only one. There's OPA. There's tons of stuff for different types of architectures, and I think people should be looking into those more. Something that, okay, like I changed something in the policy, this actually changes something in the system. I changed something in the system, this actually changes something in the policy. Instead of like hiring some I don't know, GRC advisor to like read through your SSP every year. Hey, we need to make sure this is right before we meet the auditors.
These 3 laws changed.
Right, and we need to make sure that this is right, or else we're going to get, findings. So documentation in a whole, I think the point I'm trying to make is accounting for these things in the documentation is important. The way we're doing documentation is just not good enough.
Right.
For 2025.
Agreed. And personally, people who know me know this is a fact. Some people know it's true, but some people, I'm not a fan of OSCAL because it is way too complicated for the systems that are in place. Now, it makes perfect sense, I believe, for truly large governmental systems that are owned from top to bottom, but people just are not going to share that type of information out with competitors, right? So there's still going to be some proprietary nature of things. So it's going to be, I think, difficult to kind of get truly into that fully automated way because I think vendors are not going to, maybe I'm just speaking of me, they're not going to be fully transparent. I mean, we're very transparent, and I think you know that, but I think there's some areas that we may not be as transparent on. Not that we're trying to hide anything, but I think just OSCALs can get very complicated in the nature. Pure, simple JSON is clean. And you know what? If I write JSON in a format that I want to write it in, and the next company writes it in the format that they got it in, they have this thing called AI. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's really cool. And it can do some interpretation on that JSON and give you back an interface pretty quickly as well. So.
Yeah, the thing about JSON is it's not really that hard to read, though.
No, it's not.
But, so I question when you hear people publicly talk about, well, reading JSON and XML is hard. I'm like, what are you
talking about? Right.
What are you talking about?
It's very
But I agree with you on OSCAL, though, that the thing about it is it's been around for a while, and I feel like it's a little bit too complicated for the average GRC professional. If it was more usable, it would be more used.
100% agree.
Yeah, the people that use OSCAL are the GRC automation platforms, and they're doing it for you. No one's doing OSCAL in-house for themselves.
Right.
So it's so complicated that you need a team of developers and a software to do it. Then how usable
So you're saying I can't hire an intern off the street to go learn OSCAL? Is that what you're saying?
High school Tanner should have never been asked to do
High school Tanner
OSCAL.
should never been asked to do.
For the record, InfusionPoints did not ask me to.
Yeah, right. Which becomes expensive, right? I mean, we want to be able to provide the top-notch security at that lowest cost that we can, and still deliver quality. Quality I think is extremely important in this. Quality and with consistency, I think it will go over top of any additional framework that you want to put on top of it. Something if you think about what they're trying to do with this second phase of FedRAMP 20x is we were kind of warned a little bit. Don't rush to be number one. Make sure you deliver quality versus delivering a package that's thought halfway through, right? So we really got to be focused on delivering a quality product. I'd love to get your idea on, how could you and your team help improve our quality, and how much longer do you think that's going to add to what our deliverables will be? Because the KSIs, they look pretty straightforward, and but anyway, food for thought.
So I did think about this pretty extensively because the new RFCs that came out sort of said, hey, 3PALs can sort of recommend things, not necessarily do advising. Like I can't do the engineering for you guys, but if we review your package and say, this is something that you might want to think about doing, or this could be better. I think that's a really interesting take on things. So, and we're not even giving the recommendation this time around. We're just kind of providing a qualitative analysis on what you're doing. And I think that's actually really great. And then FedRAMP can actually make the decision on basically, hey, based on the observations that I made, what can we conclude for InfusionPoints. And in terms of providing value, I think We need to get away. Pete echoed this when he did the announcement for phase two, that for the longest time compliance was like, hey, hit the bar and then you just stay there. But because, you know, we're not giving the recommendation, there's no set line in the sand, you can kind of push it as far as you want to. And I think that's the point of a marketplace. The whole
Yes.
FedRAMP marketplace, the FedRAMP marketplace should be competitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to go into the marketplace and say, okay, there's these different services, but this one hits a bar that I wanna have for my company, or this one does something a little bit more than this other one does, so I'm gonna go with that one. The way the marketplace works right now is like, you know, they did a FedRAMP assessment, so you know they met a minimum bar. But I think once we get to the newer marketplace, which is the whole vision for this thing, is that, you know, you have a marketplace, everyone has their own trust center, and they have their machine readable formats and such. Then customers will actually be able to come to better conclusions on, oh wow, you know, this client is going above and beyond. And I think going back to your question on like how can we add value, is that we're trying to make sure that, you know, you're not just doing the bare minimum. You
Right.
know, maybe you're not just encrypting buckets. What do you have around that encryption? What sort of defense in depth stuff do you have going on there? What sort of
Like, do you put all your logs into an account that nobody can have access to unless you break glass to go in?
right,
You know, so
what sort of unique aspects could you actually bring to your product that nobody else is doing?
right,
And to your point, yet sometimes you don't want to share that secret sauce.
right.
Um, yeah.
And some of it you do. You know, I think it go like I said. There's a line somewhere. I don't know where that line is yet. Because we'll talk to any customer that we talk to. We're fully transparent, and it's all there. You can see it, right? But trying to find and maybe talk to some of your non-customers, you know, it's a fine line, because I think we do have some good secret sauces about how we've done things here over the last dozen years or so. I mean, we've been in business for 18, but the last dozen or so we've been focused on, you know, FedRAMP and delivering good solid services in that FedRAMP space. So, Tanner, how about you on the quality and value side?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's trying to figure out how we put ourselves in the trust center viewer's shoes, whether
Right.
that's the, you know, potential customer that wants to see what they would be getting. You know, think about, like you talked about, giving away some of the secret sauce, figuring out where the line is on the Costco sample or
Right,
the Sam's
right.
Club sample, or whichever one you shop at, but figuring out what is going to make the path of least resistance the genuine path of least resistance for somebody that's not a technical,
Right.
you know, not a technical person. You know, from an assessment perspective, we definitely want somebody like an Ethan and Fortreum to come in and, you know, check our logic and make sure that we're getting everything from a security perspective. But, you know, if you don't know what you're looking at from a security perspective, you work for a federal agency and you get tasked something and you've never even heard of FedRAMP, let alone
Right.
what a KSI is, how are you going to report to your executive or to your leadership, or, you know, whoever you have to report to say, you know, these people are secure, these people are looking good. So making sure that we have the graphics and the dashboards that we need to, you know, communicate these brand new changes with the VDR RFC, or, you know, making the trust center show those significant changes that are coming through, so that your agency official knows what's happening with the system. I think making sure that we're capturing everything in that regard, and then moving forward with what we know as experts in the field that have been through assessment after assessment after assessment to give the comprehensive view of security is key.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. So when do you think we're going to be ready to actually turn this over to Ethan so he can pick it apart? That's the question he wants to know too. I can see it.
Yeah, I know.
I want to see it.
Well, I know the answer is ASAP.
Yes.
And I know, but you know, we're making really good strides at this point. We have a really good grasp on all the RFCs and who's doing those. And we actually, you know, about 50 feet that way, we have an entire team of engineers working on the AuditShield modules and the Trust Center, and unpacking the new grenade from the grenade of VDR, or Vader as we call it internally. A lot of Star Wars fans here. So that I think that within the next couple weeks, we'll be in a really good spot. As far as delivery.
But we might actually start giving things sooner than later, Ethan. So
Yeah,
you'll be able to start
absolutely.
see the KSIs. You won't see the full picture yet, but the full picture will come a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
But we're getting close to releasing. We're putting all the descriptions and the criteria in.
Mm-hmm.
So, have any questions for us, Ethan? I mean,
Hopefully nothing changes.
what's that?
Hopefully nothing changes. I said, hopefully nothing changes. I know the RFCs close tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Sure,
government's
there'll be some changes, like the last time, but there was nothing big. I mean, for us, there was nothing big that we had to go back and redo. So,
Yeah. And you guys iterated pretty well the last time. I remember the first set of KSIs that came out for the low, they came out and you guys pretty much built it out, and then you had to go back and update it because they
we made it a little more modular too, because I think we were doing KSIs and we end up separating all the validations to make it a little more modular as well. So it makes it easier for us to look at things now. So it'll be easier even to believe to reread the code. So in the last few minutes here, I'm going to ask you some basic questions. I like to throw these out, and and I'm gonna do it the way I actually sent you the questions as well. So, but both of you guys, what's your favorite book and why?
I'll give two answers.
One
answer.
Yeah, just
if
one.
it's one answer, I got to say the Bible.
Okay.
That's that it keeps me going. All that more than welcome to answer any questions on that, but definitely the Bible.
Cool.
If I had to pick a secular one, it would be Catcher in the Rye, probably.
Great book.
Yeah.
Great book.
Good existentialism.
Yeah.
Really great for adolescence too. It was big for me sophomore year of high school.
Good timing.
Yeah.
Ethan, what's that?
Favorite book would have to be Great Expectations by Charles Dickens.
Great book.
Yeah, I read that one. I used to read it like every year, like just reread it, and it's one of those books where the second, and the third time I reread it, and it was like, wow, I'm actually getting something different. Because you mature as you get older.
Yes.
So that's a good book. Yeah.
Cool.
You got a great attention span.
And my book is The Stand, and that's like a 1,000-page and I read it in high school as well, and that was fantastic. But audience, if they've ever watched me before, they've heard me say that before. So I know what you guys did this past summer, but real quickly, you guys both did something really big and exciting. So maybe you can go first. Ethan, what was the big thing that you did this past summer? He's like, what did I do? Yeah, what did you did something pretty exciting.
He had a wild summer. He doesn't.
You did have a
remember,
wild summer.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Japan in June.
Yeah, that summer, right?
Yeah, that was fun. I went there for the first KubeCon and Cloud Native conference in Tokyo, and it was just great to just meet a lot of developers, builders. I mean, I like going to conferences where people are talking about building things and not necessarily compliance frameworks. The NIST 800-53 actually followed me there because they did a presentation on OSCAL, and it was a fun trip. Yeah.
Good. Tanner?
Well, my wife and I became homeowners this summer, so that's definitely the biggest thing that happened this summer.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm not gonna say what I did because it wasn't that exciting. But so, what do you like to do outside of work? What do you guys like to do outside of work? Just one big thing besides work, because Ethan, I think you always work.
I do always work. It actually is just like it's all integrated.
Yeah.
So I people ask me all the time, like, how do you do all this stuff? I was like, it's all integrated. Like, I just focus on stuff that I don't get to do at work. So I like do development and contribute to open source, and I like staying fit, and I do boxing, Olympic lifting I used to do.
It's not work if you love what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the same way. So
Awesome. Yeah, I enjoy playing the drums. That's a big one for me.
I don't think I knew that.
Really?
About you. No, I mean, I knew Jason played the drums.
Yeah.
So I thought you played like the guitar or the bass for some reason.
I'm very.
Oh no, I knew you were a drummer. You did the drums in a marching band.
In high school. And
I knew
college,
that. I knew that. I don't know why I didn't know that.
How long have you been playing the drums then?
Well, I was pots and pans when I was 3. My mom jokes, but as far as I started in percussion in middle school in 7th grade, but I've been playing drum set since 8th grade. So 11 years, 12 years at this point.
Cool. Anything else you guys can think of you want to talk about? Because I think we're close to being where we need to be.
That's a loaded question. There's a whole lot going on with 20x. So
I mean, if you want to bring
Wait,
it,
did we say that we're not doing screenshots anymore? We covered that one, right?
we did, but you know what? You could emphasize it too. I mean, say that again now. What do we?
say this. I will say this. So I did a talk at B-Sides Orlando, and I had a big screen that said "Abolish screenshots." And the point I was trying to make is that, someone took like 50 screenshots to show all the users in someone's an account, and I put up one CLI command, and I was like, well, all this time and effort could have been saved with this one CLI command. But we still have people today that like screenshots and want to do it the old way, and it's ridiculous.
Yes, everything can be done with either a PowerShell script, a Python script, command line, some kind of Lambda, everything. And if it can't, then you need to ask the question why. Why is your API interface not allow that? Right? Then you work on that vendor and say you need to be able to give me that information. But every bit of the metadata should be there and available for you to be able to pull out. Now you might have to go through some tricks, because as an example, we use AD, and we have to do some PowerShell scripts with some automation documents to get the information that we need. But guess what? There's a way to do it. There's always a way to do it. So, if I could get rid of screenshots, that would definitely make me a happy camper. And I always like to say this as well. They don't let me set in audits anymore because I get a little angry sometimes. And I'm usually not an angry person, but sometimes it's like, come on, man, really? Let's figure this out,
Well,
So
we see an interesting thing, because I've had clients where we've built like specific scripts to help them pull the information, and they were like, "Yeah, we're just going to give you screenshots." And I'm like, "All right, well, cool."
Sure.
Yeah, you guys just did that in one of the audits I was in. It was great.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Saved God knows how many screenshots. And
Right.
Got weight off my back.
There you go. If they're willing to do it, So, but I'd like to wrap it up if that's okay with you guys. Thank you guys for your time, and let's abolish all screenshots, and let's figure out how to automate as much as we can. And you can always find us behind the shield here at this podcast. As always, I may not be hosting a lot of these podcasts, but you can find one of our team here running the show. Truly appreciate your time and everything that you've done for us through this process. Not that you've given us anything, but because you've been pretty critical as well.
Yeah, let's be careful.
There's definitely that fine line. So, but truly appreciate it. Thank you guys very much.